Should go quotient rule or bring it up in product rule? Okie dokie. Low, be high, it's high, be low. I am okay if you do this all in one step. That is to say, when you get to the second implicit derivative and you pick up a dy dx, when you take the derivative of a y term, rather than call it dy dx, if you just put in dy dx, which is negative x squared over y squared, I am fine with combining those two over the square of what's below. Do we agree somewhat with the first and second derivatives? Any questions? Okay. Finish up 5 if you haven't already done so. I will too. And we seem like we are doing fine. Okay, what about that one? Rico? Okay, pretty easy, yeah? All right. That's it. How about then questions on the old homework from Friday? Okay, I'll throw the answers and then I'll go back and get questions. Okie dokie. So for the extra practice 123, anybody who was absent, you need that? I just got some. Get that? You get it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so our vectors, are they
So they should be pointing, but this publisher uses round, which is no.
Yeah, well, just like that, and like down here.
Yeah, that's this one. That's what it should.
Yeah, so it should be.
These, yeah, they should not be.
Okay.
Okay, so good question. I almost called you Kate. Elizabeth just.
For shame.
Yeah. These should be vectors, so they should be pointy, not rounded. This publisher, for whatever reason, writes them that way, which is not good. Okay. So ED, yes.
Yes.
Then PAD. All no calculator. This one becomes quite a mess for a while. It requires a lot of algebra cleanup, but if you persevere and not wuss out, it'll happen for you. If you just circle B to me, you skip it because it took a while.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Here is for A. There's the acceleration vector at any time, but an acceleration vector at 3 is a vector. Should have either this pointing notation or I hat, J hat. Okay. B, when you say speed, you're talking about the magnitude of the velocity. In terms of notation, then it's typical to write speed as that way. Okay. If you just left it without a label, that's fine. Or if you just wrote the word speed, that's fine. But that's the speed word. C, sorry about, first of all, the formatting. That got split. That was actually part of D. Sorry about that. But the tangent line is y minus 2 equals 4/5 times the quantity x plus 6. D, all times where the particle is in the first quadrant implies you need to find when x and y, not or, and, are both positive, and that was from t less than -6 and greater than 1. Now, if you assumed only positive times, then I guess you would have only time greater than 1. I didn't see anything about only positive time, so I gave both solutions. Okay? This one is the hardest one. To be sure, this was from the Rogatski book. This was actually not an AP question, it was a college textbook question that I thought was good. And I only, there it is, okay. Vector F is 3e to the 2t plus 2 and 4e to the 2t, I think I said 2e plus 2, but I meant 2t plus 2, and 4e to the 2t plus 2. Plus 2. Vector G, I have 9e to the negative 3t and 12e to the negative 3t. How'd that go? That's hard. This time, if you didn't do part A, then part B was really going to be hard. That's the log of 3 minus 2 over 5. Here's my answer for that. And then there are these are calculator actives, so that's why you're looking at decimal answers. Negative 1.10425 is sure 3 decimals or more. I'm giving you 5. B is 1.4546, excuse me. The acceleration vector at 2 should be a horizontal component, vertical components, negative e squared sine e squared, and negative 4e to the negative dose. And the total distance is a scalar, it's a number, 3.5435. Okay, question. Questions? 3, yes. Free response 3, I assume you mean free response 3, or do you mean multiple choice 3? Multiple choice 3? Oh, both. Okay, multiple choice 3 and free response 3.
Free response 6D.
Free response 6D. Wait,
is there 6?
just think arc plane.
Oh.
Okay. Anything else? All right then. Let us begin. Shall we? So, let's start with this bad boy. I'm going to cut this, and actually, I guess I can. All right. So, the thought process that I went through is, reading it obviously, particle F has a position function which is very general. We need to know specifically what are the functions of time beyond just calling it x of t and y of t. Give you an initial condition. This is the key. This is the star of the show. The velocity vector is always 2 times the position vector. First, please label your work. There's F, there's G, there's position, there's velocity, there's acceleration. There's at least 6 different quantities going on here that you need to label your work. That's just common courtesy. The person has to read it. So I'm talking about vector F here. The velocity vector. What's velocity vector usually found by doing? Derivatives of x and derivatives of y. They say it's also, in this case, its velocity vector is 2 times the position vector. So the horizontal part is 2 times the position vector, which makes it 2x. Not the velocity vector, which would be x prime, but the position vector, x. And the 2 times the position vector, y. That then tells you that the change in x with respect to time, I'm going to go away from prime notation because the derivatives in terms of x itself, and use Leibniz notation. When you get a derivative that's in terms of that variable itself, it's much better to use Leibniz notation than prime notation. All right, so dx dt is 2x. How do we get to the position? Integrate. Okay, so good math says we separate the variables. Dx over x equals 2 dt. If I separate the variables, you could separate them with the 2 a couple different ways. But if I integrate, natural log of the absolute value of x equals 2t plus a constant. I remind you, try and make your t's and your plus signs very different so you don't get confused. Initial condition now or solve then initial condition later? I don't care.
No, now.
Now, okay. What initial condition x and t do we put in? When t is -1, x is 3. Okay, so natural log of the absolute value of 3 is -2 plus c. c then is 2 plus the natural log of 3. The absolute value is superfluous at that point because it's a positive number, right? That means then that the natural log of the absolute value of x is 2t plus 2 plus natural log of 3 if I put the c. Now let's solve. How shall we solve for x? Exponentiate absolute value of x is e to the... Now when you take e to the all that stuff, I typically write it as a product of those things. Do you recall that? Okay. Now let's do actually two things. When I dump the absolute value, I must use plus or minus. Let's do e to the natural log of 3 first. E to the natural log of 3 is just 3. Whether you put these together like I did in my answer or not, you could keep them separate. That's fine. I put them together because they have the same base, and so I called it e to the 2t plus 2 by exponent rules, right? You should show plus or minus, but then intentionally choose which one makes sense in terms of the context of the problem. Which do I choose? Yeah, because time equal -1, x is positive 3, we choose the positive. So x is 3e to the 2t plus 2. All right. Now the new question is, all right, so do I have to do all that stuff again, and again, and again, and again? I'm okay if you could give me the y equation for f without all that stuff. The only thing that's good, the differential equation is the same. What's different? The initial condition is a little different. You can see the y is different. So, what's the y equation then? Where this x, when x was 3, or should we just do all the work in here? I don't. Oh, when x was 3, 3 was here, right? So when y is 4, can we assume that'll be the case? Or is that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Would you bet your life on it? I would, but whatever. Okay.
I should be working.
Oh, they wouldn't do something like this on the IQ test. It would be too much of a time. But the y equation, or the g vector equation, yeah? It's a little different in that the relationship isn't double the position. In this case, they say this is not the g vector, sorry. G vector label, this is the velocity of g vector technically, is x prime, y prime. This time they say the velocity vector is -3 times the position, so x prime is -3x and y prime is -3y. So you probably do that stuff again for x or y and then kind of adapt it for the other. You feel like you can roll and do that? Okay. So you separate the variables. That's all the reason I chose this, the vector part of it's cool, but the differential equation stuff, that's good practice. We need that practice.
What is the blue stuff? Like the stuff next?
It's all blue, dude.
Like the number part B.
Here?
Yeah.
G, vector G.
And then
The velocity of G, the velocity vector for G is still x prime and y prime. It's always x prime, y prime for the velocity vector. But in this case, for G, they said that the velocity is 3 times the position. So that's why okay, the position vector is xy. So if it's -3 times the position vector, it's -3x, -3y. You with me?
Yeah, no. It's okay.
No, it's not okay. Did you follow along? Was this okay when they said the velocity of F vector was 2 times the position vector?
Yeah.
I know velocity vector is x prime, y prime, and it's also, they also say the velocity vector is 2 times.
Yeah.
Are we
No, I
cool?
got it.
Okay.
I thought that was the part that you were talking about.
No, I'm not, sorry, this is still a, so now that you have the vectors, should we go to B or give you a minute to finish A? Okay, I'll give you a second to finish A, then we'll go on to part B once you have both vectors.
Oh, I know why it is.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
For A, if you just kind of look at the problem, and be like, well, if it's 3, that means that the E bit has to equal 1, so you just set the exponent equal to 0 and solve for C. Like it'd be 2t plus C equals 0.
So if I understand your question, are you saying I recognize that statement is directly tied? This is like the rate of change is proportional to the amount, and you just knew that that was
Well,
an exponential growth
it
equation?
has to be E because that's the
Well, that's how I did it.
That's the
I
only thing that.
They did what?
I didn't do all the anti.
What did you do?
I kind of just thought about it, and I thought
Because
it has
if
to be
it's,
E
if
and it has
it's
to be
2
a
times the
2.
position vector, it has to be change the 2t, some form of that.
Then I tried.
Like it has to
Then I
be.
satisfied the initial condition.
And then it would be, if you made it, if you look at the points, it'd be 3 times 1 and 4 times 1, which would make sense because then it'd be 3 times e to the 2t plus a c, where the e part of it equals 1. And then, so you just solve for t for that. So you solve for when the exponent equals 0. It makes it a lot easier.
I just started with E to the 2t because I knew it says.
So you did go
And then I
first.
played with it to satisfy the initial condition.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand your
He did the same thing.
approach. Oh, you did? So you did know it was Z to start with, and then you
Yeah.
played tweak. Okay.
Because that's the only function that
In some way related to its origin. That's
I was like, I know it's
quasi true. All exponentials actually that's
I was
true.
scared like that.
Okay. Are we good, ready for B? Or B is easy? B, okay. Same position, what does that imply? Well, if vector F and vector G have the same position, then there has to be a time. Do I need to know when X's are the same, or Y's are the same, or it has to be both at the same time? Yeah, it can't be, they can't have passed through the same X, but at different times of the same Y. It has to be in the same X and Y at the same time. So we need to set the X's or and the Y's together, set them equal to each other rather, and verify that there is a time where they're equal and it's the same time for both. So if I wrote the equivalence between the X's, X of F equal X of G, then that would be 3e to the 2t plus t needs to equal 9e to the negative 3t. Wait. This will draw on your algebra skills, big time. Be careful. What can I do? Okay, you could divide both sides by 3. That's a good safe start. It gets you rolling into the problem. I'm down. Okay, 3e to the negative 3t. Now the question is, shall I move these together by subtraction or division? Well, consider which one would make your life good. Feels like subtraction. If I add them together, they're not like terms. What am I going to do then? Let's go division. Yeah, let's use laws of exponents. That'll be great. What are the laws of exponents for the left side? Subtract. What's 2t minus negative 3t? So, no, minus negative. So 5t plus 2, yeah? And natural log, boom. 5t plus 2 equals natural log of 3, then you're home free. T is natural log of 3 minus 2 over 5. Now the question is that the same for the y's. You have two options. You could plug that into the y equations and see, or you could just do the same kind of approach, verify that the y's are also equal. That's what I did. I didn't really want to think about plugging those in and simplifying. I guess it wouldn't be too bad, but I set the y's equal to each other and did the same, roughly the same algebra, and I found that it was the same time. Okay? Okay. Does that make sense? On free response 3. How about multiple choice 3? Is that still a question, somebody? Okay, this is the big mess. Okay, and all I ask is that you keep it organized, write neatly, and persevere. Speed. Speed is the magnitude of the velocity, how much velocity without the vector component, the direction component, and it comes from the old Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so we need x prime squared and y prime squared. X prime is e to the t negative sine t plus e to the t cosine t. Y squared is e to the t cosine t plus e to the t sine t. Boom. Almost there. E to the negative sine, this guy's squared would be e. Oh, yeah, did you?
I didn't really do it right.
You pulled out an e to the t squared and square rooted? Okay. Do you agree that you can take out an e to the t squared here, an e to the t squared here, and all those are gone? Yes? Okay. This then is sine squared minus 2 sine cosine. And this is cosine squared plus 2 sine cosine plus sine squared. Okay. These subtract away. Sine squared plus cosine squared is 1, and there are 2 of them.
And we never said you can't.
And then at time 2. Sorry. I can write more if you want. What? Step 1, 2, 3. Which step?
2.
Step 2. Are you cool with the pointy e?
Oh, you're putting it in.
I factored out an e squared here and an e squared there, then factored an e squared out of the whole and square rooted. That's how that. Actually, e to the t rather, not squared. Sorry, e to the t squared. Are you with me?
Let me try.
Yeah.
Okay. They all have an e squared, then square rooted. That's why it's just a normal.
Okay, and then I get the sine squared, and then where's that?
This here, after the e was gone, it was negative sine t plus cosine t all squared. Remember, when you square, it's FOIL. It's not square this, square this. It's sine squared minus sine t minus sine cosine. That's where negative 2. Plus cosine squared. The same as back here, but it's all positive. There's no negative there. The sine 2, the 2 sine cosines subtract away. And then I put sine squared plus cosine squared together into 1. Each sine squared plus cosine squared is 1.
Yeah, make sure you have to solve for C and then you do
Free response 16. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm good now.
Other questions on this?
Yeah. The first response for D.
First free response part D.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So, first of all, do you agree first quadrant means x positive and y positive?
Yes.
Okay. I can't tell if x and y are positive until I have x and y, so that's the main bunch of the work is get x and y. I need the x and y, the position vector.
Yeah.
The velocity vector gives x prime and y prime.
Yeah.
So to get x and y, I'm going to have to integrate. So if dx dt, or x prime if you like, is 2t plus 5, then x is t squared plus 5t plus a constant. And they tell you that at time 0, the x is negative 6. So that gets my c. X is t squared plus 5t minus 6. Are we cool?
Yeah.
By the same token, y, or dy dt rather, is 4e to the 2t. So I integrate it. Y is, the antiderivative of this I had was 2e to the 2t plus a c. The initial condition there was at time 0, y is 2. That means that c must be 0.
Yeah.
So y is 2e to the 2t. Now to answer the question, I need to know when they both are positive. Well, this is always positive because it's exponential. So I need to just focus on this. Factor, well, what are the factors? 6 and 1 or 5 and, or 3 and 2? This is the great gotcha of algebra 1 factor problems. 6 and negative. Yes. This, every algebra 1 kid makes this mistake over and over. Well, probably not you guys, but most. So 6 and negative 1 are the factors, which the zeros that are negative 6 and positive 1. I had no information that time was only positive, so I'm just going to go with the whole time frame. The signs are positive, negative, positive. So that, combined with the always positive y's, tells me I choose these two time frames. The only issue after that is, what about the endpoints? Is x positive at negative 6? And therefore in the quadrant, or is it?
How do you know it's 0?
It's 0, so that's on the axis, it's not really in the quadrant. That's the times when x would be 0, but that's not in the quadrant. What do you mean, how do I
Why
know
did you
that?
say anything?
Well, they're the endpoints of the time region, sorry. They're the endpoints of the intervals.
Oh.
See what I mean? Not of the curve. Okay. Does that make sense?
So you do the stars of plus minus, and then what are the, we talked about the endpoints?
The question is always, should I include them equal to or not? Because at negative 6, x would be 0. That's not in the first quadrant. It's on the axis. I do not include it. Okay. All right. Other questions? C and one on tonight's homework. C? I couldn't hear you. What? 6B. Oh, my bad. 6B? Gotcha. You say B as in boy or D as in dog? Boy or dog?
Dog.
Thank you. I'm deaf over here, man. Help me. Okay. So, both in parametric and vectors, you should read this is arc length. Distance is arc length. That actually totally jives because distance is always, in one-dimensional or two-dimensional measure, distance is always the integral of speed.
Yeah. I don't understand.
So, while you, oh, you didn't square it. Okie dokie.
Oh, and then.
What, did you say one time?
Yeah.
Okay. One on say no. Oh, boo. That's not difficult at all. Would you agree that the domain
Oh, sorry, never mind.
is all real? Because that would not be zero nor negative. Okay. Would you agree that x is inversely related to y? As x gets bigger, y will get smaller? And would you also agree that the biggest possible y is when x is at its smallest? If you don't take a, or x squared is at its smallest. And so what's the max? X squared, I should say x squared. So yes. Okay, so 0, 1 over root 10, which is practically maybe 1/3-ish. Very small. And as x increases, the function will decrease, and y is always positive, and it's even. All these things go through my head. Okay? You're rolling 2 to 5, revolved around the x-axis.
Actually need. Honestly, I won't be doing that. Now that we've done all the see that go stuff. Last time we kind of did the books, but it was mainly just.
And I'm feeling our tangent coming at you.
We did lots of other places.
Cool.
What is it? No, it's
I
gonna
have
take
many
some
people
of
to require.
I'm not taking any of it.
Honestly,
Those are the two heavyweight
Why come to that? I wouldn't have to get anything
Honestly, I'm so glad I
done.
took AP Lit.
I need a whole bunch of surplus in my house.
Wait, so what does it mean when?
That's very deep. What?
What does it mean when first?
This is, that's the first one.
Oh, the first part.
Sorry about that. Okay, wow, here we go.
I can read them off.
Oh, let me see. Okay, got to stop my recording. Hang on just a second, I'm not ready.